Welcome back guys, this is Gamer for Life back with another video, and this time we're gonna fly in Japan. So let's go to the map and first of all choose our aircraft. So click on the drop down menu and choose airliners, and in case you have the fly-by-wire mod installed in your community folder, you'd see it listed here. So click on that and that will become your chosen aircraft for your flight. Now let's type in the code for international Tokyo airport, which is also called Haneda Airport. Haneda. Apologies for my pronunciation, but it's RJTT. So that will be our departure airport, and we're going to be landing on another international airport inside Japan, which is RJBB, which is Kansai International Airport. Now the reason for choosing this airport is because if you type in Mount Fuji, which is another wonder in the world, it lies between these two airports. So that means when we fly, we'll be able to have a visual look at the beautiful Mount Fuji. So let's choose our flight, which is going to be low IFR, low altitude. It's going to be about half an hour flight of 243 nautical mile. But first of all, let's plan for our cold and dark start. So I'm gonna choose a ramp which is closest to our departure runway, and as usual it zooms back out whenever you choose something. So I'm not sure when they are gonna fix it. So this standard instrument departure seems fairly okay. Now let's go to our arrival airport, and here we're gonna plan for doing an ILS landing, and in fact auto landing. So first, the default runway is 24 right. Let's see what ILS options we have. So here you can see for 24 right we have ILS 24 right Y and Z. So let's choose Y, and it gives you a kind of an awkward start, the standard arrival, and it's true for both Y and Z. So let's not worry about these, let's choose Y, and we'll be activating the approach mode to avoid that awkward sharp turn, and I'll be showing you how we can accomplish that. So our flight is planned. Now what we need to do, we need to look at our cruise altitude, which is 21,900. It's almost 22,000. So I plan on doing it to 20,000, and I may go even below 20,000 depending on how visually we can have better look at the Mount Fuji. So at Meiya we have to be at the 3,500 feet approximately altitude, where we can do ILS landing. So we are weather gonna be clear, and we're gonna do a early morning flight. So let's click fly. So let's click on ready to fly, and here we are. So our radio is off, and let's turn the AI communication to manual for now. We'll be switching it to AI soon. So let's minimize these ATC communication window as well, and let's take a look inside the aircraft. It's completely pitch black, so let's take a peek outside, and it's a nice sunny early morning time. The weather seems so nice and clean, and everything seems so calm and quiet. It looks like everybody is sleeping and nobody has woken up except for the few guys standing like robots. Anyways, let's go inside. Let's go to the top panel and turn on the batteries, both 1 and 2, and turn on external power. Let's set the ADIRS switches to nav and turn on oxygen cruise supply, and let's turn on the fuel pumps, all 6 of them. Alrighty, let's set the screen brightness first. Okay, now the upper and lower ECAM display is bright, and let's give a little light to our co-pilot as well. Doesn't hurt anything. And let's turn on our flight tab, because we're going to use it for our pushback. Okay, so let's now turn on the APU master switch and APU starter, and that is pretty much about it. We have to wait for the APU. So meanwhile, let's take clearance for our flight. So we're gonna ask for IFR clearance, and it is telling us to climb for the initial altitude of 12,000 feet, so we're going to keep that in mind. Righty, it's manual, so we have to acknowledge the transmission. Okay, so it tells us to go to frequency 1 to 1.975, where we can request for taxi clearance. Okay, so APU has become available. Let's turn on APU bleed, and we have to wait for the transmission because we have to acknowledge it. So we have our taxi clearance, and we have to be at 118.725 frequency when we will be taking clearance for takeoff. Okay, so far so good, everything seems good, and let's switch to our takeoff frequency, and we can leave it pretty much there. So let's minimize this panel, ATC panel, and let's switch it to the pushback tab, and let's call in our pushback tug. So once the pushback tug gets into position and we start pushing our plane back, so IR alignment is still in process, it's going to take 5 minutes approximate. So once it's in alignment, we are pushed back, then we can start our engines. So let's wait for the pushback tug to get into position, and meanwhile I think we can move these tabs off the screen. So I'm gonna put these to my next monitor. Let's go outside. The pushback tug is still in alignment. That's it, we have it. So let's now start pushback and release our parking brake. So it's giving us a different route. I was planning on to move from the left side of the screen, but seems like it's gonna ask us to make a go around. Not bad. So that means we have to instruct our plane to turn right, to instruct our pushback tug to turn the plane to the right side. Okay, so once in position, I'll be stopping the pushback. Right, let's get straight. I know I should have followed the yellow lines, but this is a simulation. I'm no pilot. I do not intend to be a perfect pilot, so bear with me. So let's call off the pushback tug now and engage our parking brakes. And now is the time to turn on our engines. So turn on engine 1 first. Pushback tug is going away. So IR alignment still gonna take 2 minutes. And our engine 2 is firing up. On the right side you can hear. So I'm gonna just align my throttle wheel on my joystick with that of the plane, so that there's no mismatch once the engines start. So the engine 2 is available. Let's turn on engine 1. That beep gives us the hope that IR is soon going to be aligned. Engine 1 is also firing up pretty soon. So I'm setting all the options for the altitude, heading, and the speed to the engaged mode, but all except the speed have responded. So speed has to be set up once we are in the air. The initial climb altitude is 12,000 feet above the grounds that we have set up already. So IR alignment has been achieved, and our engine 1 is also almost stabilized. It's become available now. So we can now turn off APU. We don't need that because the plane is already fired up. Let's turn on the beacon lights, the strobe lights, the wing lights, and let's set the landing lights to taxi. And let's turn on our landing lights. And our taxi lights are set to on. So let's turn on no smoke prompt and the seatbelt sign prompt on. No smoke is set to auto. It should be no all the time, in fact. Okay, so let's release parking brake, add a little throttle, but put it back to 0. Because once engine gets some thrust, they just keep moving on without any need of thrust. Now let's make our way to our runway 22 for takeoff. Let's slow down a little. We have to make a right turn here. I always use navigational add while I'm taxiing. I find it quite easy to navigate to the runway, whether for takeoff or for taxiing after landing. But if you don't like it, you know the airport well, you can turn it off in the assistance options. So you must be seeing the throttle is set to 0 already and the plane is moving on its own. So that's how the real aircraft behave in real life. You just need to give that initial push if the aircraft is stationary. And once the aircraft gets going, you need to be... So let's set the AIs to... set the ATC communication to AI, and I'll move that to my second monitor, because now as soon as we touch that border of entering the area for the runway, I'm going to turn the map on, and I'm also going to keep it on my second monitor. But as soon as you touch that border where you're entering the runway, the ATC will spontaneously ask for the permission to take off. So I just added a little throttle and put the thrust levers back to 0, back to idle. And the plane starts going. Just slowing down while making gentle turn. And I'm gonna further slow down the plane as we approach that label where the runway markings are visible. You know, this is where you need to take permission for takeoff. I'm gonna slow down or maybe stop till the ATC communication kicks in. So there you go, you can hear ATC asking for permission, because now the ATC communication is handed over to AI, so it's gonna do its thing all the way. So let's add a little throttle and get into position on the runway. So let's line up with the runway and engage brakes, engage parking brake, because we're going to prepare our aircraft for the takeoff. So our desired altitude is already set up, and we can lower the flaps to 1 and engage the auto brakes to medium, and let's engage speed brakes. So with that, we are all done. That's the takeoff checklist. Let me set my display so that I can see my thrust levers. I'm gonna release parking brake and increase the thrust lever, increase the throttle to let the engines stabilize first and get the plane going. A gentle push forward on the stick, and now move the thrust levers all the way up to toga until we reach the airspeed of 140 knots, where we can rotate. So rotate, gear up, positive rate. Now set the thrust levers to climb so that the auto thrust kicks in, engaging autopilot, but I see I cannot switch the speed to the engaged mode. It's still going in managed mode, so that sometimes happen. You know, you don't need to panic, but you need to be aware that these issues sometimes do take place. So I just checked that my thrust lever is set to climb, which basically allows you to switch to auto thrust mode without any issues. So I'm going to increase the speed manually in managed mode, because currently I'm unable to engage, and I see my flaps are still set to 1. So I'm gonna set the speed of the aircraft, switch the thrust levers to 1, and now when I engage the engaged mode for speed, it works. So now all the 3 things, the speed, the heading and the altitude, are being managed by autopilot, and our flight is going great. So ATC is telling us to get the altitude of 17,000 feet, so I'm going to set it up. And this is where we have to make a right turn. So you can see TOKIS is the runway. So this is a pretty shorter flight. So TOKIS is the point where we have to make a right turn, and I'm anticipating we should soon be able to see Mount Fuji. So we are climbing up at a decent rate. Everything seems stable and working. So let's disarm our speed brakes. So let's go outside, and seems like a nice angle to view the ground scenery. What I'm more interested is in having a look at if we can see the Mount Fuji. Just taking my time to enjoy this view while the aircraft is climbing. And there it is. That is the Mount Fuji. Exactly there. And we are gonna make a right turn in a little while, and you're gonna notice. Climbing up pretty steadily with a lovely view on the ground. So you can hear the engines slowing down because we are about to reach our target altitude of 17,000 feet. And that's where we make our right turn, which gets us in a closer alignment with the Mount Fuji, where we'll be able to pass very close to it and have a clearer view of it. So about at the waypoint of ANRIN, so this is where we have to be at about 5,000 feet, and I'll be starting my descent at around Tome. So it's about time that we start our descent. So right now we are flying at an altitude of 17,000 feet, and I'm going to set it for time being to about 12,000 feet or 10,000 feet. Yes, so let's set it to 12,000 feet for now. So at about XMT waypoint, I'll be descending down further and setting my altitude of 5,000 feet. So by the time I reach RIN waypoint, I'm at least 5,000 feet, and it's not harder for me to descend further down to 3,500 feet, which is the target altitude where we intend to capture the ILS frequency and glide slope, and our plane can descend automatically for doing an ILS landing. So I'll just wait a little while and then just set my altitude to 5,000 feet so that my plane starts descending. So let's now set our altitude to 5,000 feet so that we can descend down further. So we are now at 3,500 feet, and at this point about we'll be turning on our approach mode so that we do not overshoot towards that awkward sharp angle where we have to turn back towards our runway. See what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna press performance initialization and I'm gonna activate the approach mode by pressing that button twice. Now this will allow us to lower the speed of the aircraft automatically even when we lower the flaps. So you see the plane is slowing down already as we are approaching, and we have turned on the approach mode on, but that's a very helpful add to control the speed of your aircraft.
3,500.
We'll wait a little longer as we get closer to that angle, but we are at the desired altitude where we'll be able to capture the glide slope. Anything above or below that height usually will cause you not to be able to capture the glide slope, and as a result your plane will not be able to descend down towards the runway for the ILS landing or auto landing. So this airport is located somewhere around there. So let's turn the landing system information, which will show us the runway frequency. It will show us the glide slope as well, and as we get closer you can see the diamond for glide slope is moving towards the midline. So we're getting closer, and it's a good thing, you know, it will help us direct our plane towards the runway and prevent us from overshooting. Just a few nautical miles. And you can see the diamond is moving downwards, so I just do not want to turn on the button too early, the approach mode too early, because we might end up missing the runway altogether. So we need to have ample distance and the proper alignment so that our localizer also helps our plane to align with the runway for landing. So at the moment you cannot see the localizer because we are exactly at right angle to the runway. So that is the airport, that is the runway on the most right side. It's 24 right, and we are at about the distance where we can turn on the approach mode. Just a little more wait. So I'm gonna lower the flaps to 1 so that we slow down. Let's turn on the approach mode, and you can see instantly plane starts turning towards the runway so that we do not have to fly unnecessarily. So I'm gonna add flaps to 2. We are about just within the 10 nautical miles of the runway, maybe just a little above, but But I think we have made the turn at the very right time because we are in proper alignment with the runway. You can see the localizer on the screen moving towards the midline on the flight display. So if your plane has also started descending towards the runway. So we have to make a few preparations for landing. So first things first, landing gear down, add flaps to 3. And let's set auto brakes to medium and let's engage speed brakes. And we are all set for our landing. We're perfectly aligned with the runway. I'm gonna add flaps to full. So nothing more to do except to wait and get closer to the runway, and then we'll be engaging autopilot 2 as well because we want to do an auto landing. Let's engage autopilot 2 as well, and you can see the land message appears sooner where the localizer and Glideslope message is displayed on the flight display. So land messages appeared. So that means everything has been done correctly and we'll be able to do an auto landing. So there we go. Land and flare, and we have touched down. So let's engage reverse thrust. Okay, enough of it. Let's set our thrust levers to 0. So this was about a complete flight, a shorter one, but I hope you found it interesting. So this included everything from taking off to doing an auto landing and ILS landing. So let me know what you think of the video, and send me your requests in the comments below, the kind of videos that you want me to make, and I'll be happy to do that for you. Meanwhile, do give a thumbs up to this video and do subscribe to my channel, because that's the best thing you'll be doing for me. And enjoy flying in the MSFS. Happy flying. See you in my next video. Bye bye.